Welcome to the Shellonomics Podcast, your source for pure Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles entertainment, presented by King Midas.
Alrighty, guys, another episode of Shellonomics is about to take place. We are joined here by Mr. Fellow Chucker A and Mr. Raphael in Turtles 1 and 2, the Kenn Scott. Kenn Scott, how you doing today? Thanks so much for taking some time out of your busy Friday.
I appreciate that, Mike. It's good to be here with you. It's good to be studying some Shellonomics.
Appreciate that. Guys, Kenn is the author of this book right here, Teenage Ninja to Mutant Turtle, Becoming the Real Raphael. So before we get started, how did you come up with the name of the book, actually?
Well, I wanted to avoid all legal problems. Originally, I wanted to call the book Confessions of a Ninja Turtle, and I still love that title. And so the website where people can get the book and stuff actually is turtleconfessions.com. But I thought that if I called it Confessions of a Ninja Turtle, I might get some kind of cease and desist letter, and then I would have to change the title and do all that. Now, that's not a problem when you publish through Amazon, because Amazon prints your books on demand. If one person buys a book, Amazon prints one book and ships it. It's amazing use of technology. So I was afraid of getting stopped by Nickelodeon or Viacom or whoever had the rights at the time. And so I actually had this whole plan where I was going to release the book as Confessions of a Ninja Turtle. And then the moment I got a cease and desist letter from whatever, the big behemoth corporation, I already had a press release written and a whole new cover designed. And I was going to do this big push that says Viacom tries to sue Ninja Turtle and stop, because we give a percentage of what we make off the book to the Sea Turtle Conservancy. And I was going to make this big news story about how Viacom was trying to crush the little guy and do all this. But then I found out if you change the title of your book in Amazon and then re-release it for sale, you lose all the traction and all the juice that you had from the first title, and they release it as a second book. So I wouldn't have been able to have brought over all the reviews and the juice of the SEO juice that I got from my big launch. I would have lost all that. So I just went ahead and released it as a safe title.
Oh my God, that sounds like a great name for a title of two Confessions of a Ninja Turtle. This one flows too, but that first one does, roll off the tip of your tongue a little bit more.
Yeah, I grew up being a martial artist, so all young martial artists think of themselves as ninja. So I was a teenage ninja, and then I became a mutant turtle. That's not a licensed name, so it just sort of fit. It was just a jigsaw puzzle enough to move it around. And then one of the issues, the full title is Teenage Ninja to Mutant Turtle, Becoming the Real Raphael. And real is spelled R-E-E-L. And that was because there's so many Ninja Turtles out there. There's, different people that did the voices in the cartoons. There's different people that have done different parts of the movies, so on and so forth. So I tried to put something in there that I thought would communicate, hey, it's a reel, like a movie reel. I'm the guy in the movies. And it was the best thing I could do. I got two comments back. One was like, you spelt real wrong, you idiot. And then somebody else said, what are you, about fishing? And so I was like, well, you can't please everybody.
Oh my God. So before your black belts and your Ninja Turtle trophy, man, you were a wrestling champion. So I'm a big wrestling fan myself. I still watch from time to time, and it's in your book. Can I hear more about this wrestling federation you started with your brother? Because that's something I actually did with my buddies back in the day too. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, which was the hub of Mid-Atlantic Pro Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions. And that was probably one of the most successful regional wrestling promotions in the country, along with some Florida and New York stuff. And that was the home of Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. I mean, that's where they were rooted. And so when I was growing up in the 70s and early 80s, my brother and I used to go to the Greensboro Coliseum, and we saw Ric Flair wrestle Ricky Steamboat. I mean, when they were in the prime of their time. And so for me and my brother, every Saturday we couldn't wait to get up, get our bowl of cereal, take our blankets, sit down in front of the TV, and we would watch wrestling from like 9 in the morning until like 1 in the afternoon, just flipping channels from one wrestling show to the other. And we loved it so much. And my brother Steve, who's only a few years older than I am, we started our own we would body slam each other and airplane spin and do all that stuff. we just had a great time doing. We'd interview one another and do the interviews and talk about how we were going to crush one another. And we just play the different parts. So we started our own league, just the two of us. It was the Universal Wrestling Association, I think, the UWA. And we made a championship belt out of tinfoil. And we were multiple characters. My brother's name is Steve. And so he had the best name of all. He was Steve Starr. And because he was older, he became, I think I was Courageous Kenny or something like that. And then we had other characters that we would play. Sometimes I would be the interviewer. He would be the interviewer. But anyway, he became our first heavyweight champion, Steve Starr of the Universal Wrestling Association. And then at some point I beat him, and we had a great time. And what was great about that was I didn't even realize it, but in wrestling with my brother and learning how to do suplexes and body slams and wrestling on our parents' bed like so many kids do up until we broke it. And then, man, we got a lot of trouble for that. It really was the first part of my education in learning how to do fight scenes and learning how to do fight choreography. And even though we were just silly kids screwing around, it planted the seeds that would later grow into what was essentially, the basics of the garden of my career. So wrestling early on was a great passion of ours, so much so that we beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, no, and that's what, and it's like, so us, I grew up more like the hardcore, like the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys. So we had a crazy match. We called it a ladder match. We would jump off a trampoline to try and climb on the top of my uncle's garage.
Yeah,
so I'm up there with getting the crap out of us for a broken bed for you guys and some garage chunks just falling off trying to grab that.
The furthest we ever took it wasn't actually my brother, but a good friend of mine who was also into wrestling. When we got into high school, our friend of ours, dad, owned a boxing gym with a full boxing ring in it. And our friend, even though we were in high school, we had two friends that were like 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds or whatever. And then there was me, I'm only 5'7", and then a friend of mine who was probably a little bit taller than me and a $145 weight. We actually choreographed and did an entire wrestling match in this boxing ring. And this was back in the days of VHS tapes. And we got this one friend of ours, Mike, and we gave him a VHS camera. And we're like, man, we're going to do this thing in the boxing ring. We want you to film it. Here we go. So we called action. We did this huge fight scene. My friend Brad got a bloody nose jumping off the ropes. It was tremendous. We did like 10 minutes of action. That was awesome. We got finished. We turned to Mike, and it turns out Mike didn't even hit the play button. He hit the wrong friggin' button, and we never got it. So somewhere in God's eyes was one of the greatest wrestling matches ever. But we
talk about a deleted scene, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about something else here again before we dig a little bit deeper. Is you mentioned in your book the law of attraction. So what does that mean to you?
It's funny you brought that up. I was just talking with somebody yesterday about this. The law of attraction is, and I'm not saying this is fact or anything, I choose to believe it. Yep. The law of attraction sort of works on the fact that everything in the universe has its own kind of vibration, right? I mean, our molecules are moving, our atoms and the protons and the neutrons, everything's moving around all the time. And so this creates energy and vibrations. And the law of attraction says that like vibrations will attract other similar vibrations. And so how does that work in the real in the world for me? What that means is if you focus your energy into something and you claim it and you visualize it and you see it and you work towards it. And I'm not talking about hoping or dreaming or just sitting in a chair and going, boy, I hope this happens someday. That's a little bit, you're putting a little bit of vibration out there. But when you choose to put vibrations out into the universe of the things you want by taking action, by thinking, by speaking those words, you create those vibrations so that similar things will be attracted to you. So in the most basic sense, it's like, if you do unto others as they would do unto you. If I do good things for you, Mike, you're going to want to do good things for me. You know, hopefully you won't be a dick to me. So,
100%.
So if I do good things in the world, hopefully good things come back to me. And for me, as somebody who was growing up, wanting to be an actor and an action hero in the movies, the more I put my vibration out into the world of this is what I want, this is what I see for myself, the more those things would come to you. An example is, they always say, let's say, for an example, you want to buy a new car.
Yeah.
You go online and you start looking at, let's say, Jeeps, because you're interested in a Jeep. Now, as you start driving around, you're going to start noticing more Jeeps on the road. I'm not saying the fact that you thought of it brought those Jeeps there, but now you're in tune with those vibrations. It's there. Opportunities happen, and you're feeding that cycle over and over. So one of the simplest, craziest ways that I try to put the law of attraction into my life, and this is just a silly thing, is I learned this from somebody else. Every time I get a residual check from one of the movies I've done in the mail, or if I find a quarter in the street, or if I get a paycheck from something I'm doing today, I always stop and I say out loud, I go, I love it when I get money from sources both known and unknown. I love getting money. And so the more I put that out into the universe, the more I think and hope that the vibration of money coming to me. Now, I know that sounds silly. I know you can't just sit in a chair and say it, but it's part of just creating vibration and an attitude. So that's kind of the law of attraction for me.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat there. I've read books too, and the one I do is arigato. Anytime, even if it's a penny on the ground, arigato. Appreciate anything that's given you, because the universe say, oh, you're thankful for that, we're going to give you more, instead of, man, like you're saying, if you get a residual income, $50, I know I'm better than that. This is ridiculous. Then you're going to put that vibration out and you're not going to get it,
Right.
So,
exactly.
And with the law of attraction universe, is another guy I like to follow is Dr. Joe Dispenza. He says, bring it to you in a way you least expect. So the way you least expected yours was pre-Ninja Turtle, even though you obviously have Ninja Turtle bred in you because you love pizza. Again, guys, the book here, only 2 to 3 pages per chapter, and I want you guys to check this book out, but I want to at least give you guys a sneak peek. How is it being an undercover pizza delivery guy?
Well, pizza in general is a big part of my life. It was before Ninja Turtles, and it is even after Ninja Turtles. I've got the mark of the pie. I have a pizza tattoo. I travel all around the world eating pizza, analyzing pizza, taking my friends out for pizza, making pizza videos. I love it. So again, it all sort of worked out that as I was trying to break into the movie business and figure out how to do it, there was a movie studio that they had built in North Carolina where I grew up. And, getting into a movie studio anywhere is not easy. They are fenced off and gated, and there's security guards and the whole thing. And for me, I knew as a young man in college that everything I wanted was in the movie business. It was my goal, my intent. I wanted to be an action hero. And as I went and tried to visit this movie studio in North Carolina and couldn't get in, it was killing me because they didn't give tours or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
It was killing me because I don't know what was beyond those walls, but I knew somehow or another my destiny, my golden fleece, my Wizard of Oz was somehow in those walls. And I tried working as an extra, but there was no jobs within the movie studio. It was always things on location at restaurants and things like that. And I was like, damn it, I got to get in there. And then it dawned on me that everybody opens their door for the pizza guy. Who doesn't love to get a hot, fresh pizza delivered to them, right? So I got a Domino's pizza delivery uniform. I got a couple of empty Domino's pizza boxes, and I drove right up to the security guard of this movie studio in Wilmington, and I rolled down my window. Security guard's like, can I help you? I got my little Domino's hat on and my shirt. I point to the pizzas, and I said, well, I got a delivery for production. Now, if you looked at me, I bet my hands were shaking. My heart was beating. I could taste copper in my mouth from the adrenaline that was running. The security guard looked at me, and he leaned forward. And I swear, I thought he was going to grab me and like, what? He leaned forward and he kind of looked at me and he said, okay, just follow this yellow line, drive in the back. They're all in the back lot. And he raised up the gate and I drove in and I was like, holy shit, I'm in. And I drove into the lot. I ended up pulling onto the back lot. It turns out, just by luck, they were shooting a movie on the back lot with a gunfight and a car chase. And man, I covered up my uniform with a jacket. And there's so many people on a movie set that if you just kind of blend in quietly, nobody really might notice you unless you start causing trouble. Well, I just kind of blended in. And for the next little while, I just sat and watched what was going on. And ultimately, that led to me meeting the people who were in charge of casting the extras to Ninja Turtles. And it went on from there. But just by dressing as a pizza delivery guy, I got through those walls, man. And it was like I entered the gates of heaven at that point. It was great. And it changed my life.
And it's exactly what a Ninja Turtle would do. So let's talk about, you got put on as a Foot Clan foot soldier working with the Pat Johnson. What I really like about Pat, and you talk about this in your book, is one gentleman showed up 1 minute late. And me and you come from the old school mentality. The kids nowadays, there's a couple that, still have that old school like us. But, for me, it was, if you're on time, you're late. And I just love, so did you enjoy working with that no nonsense mentality from Pat Johnson?
I certainly did. Let me share something with you real quick. Unfortunately, it's a lousy copy, but if anybody goes online and you go to YouTube and you Google my name, Kenn Scott, and then Google this short film, the title of the short film is Everything I Believe. It's called Better Never Than Late.
Oh, okay.
And it was my first attempt at making my first sort of kung fu movie.
Okay.
And it's on YouTube in 2 parts. It's really low quality streaming, but it won some awards. I think people really enjoy it. It's only like a 10 or 15 minute film.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. I loved Pat Johnson. I still love him. Unfortunately, we lost Pat Johnson last year. He passed away. But for those that don't know, Pat Johnson is a legendary karate practitioner. He was very good friends with Chuck Norris. He was the head instructor of one of Chuck Norris's flagship schools in California. He even appears in the movie Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. Pat has a part right at the beginning of that. So that shows you how far back he goes in martial arts movie culture. He's most famous for being a part of the Karate Kid movies with Ralph Macchio and William Zabka. He's the one that trained them in martial arts and did all the fight choreography for Karate Kid. At the very end of the original Karate Kid, he's actually the referee in the final fight between Billy and Ralph Macchio. He's the one that looks at William Zabka and says, go to your sensei and all that. So off of his success from Karate Kid, Pat got hired by the producers of Ninja Turtles to come in and choreograph and be the stunt coordinator for Ninja Turtles. Now, I had never met Pat, but I knew about him from looking at karate magazines when I was growing up and all that. And so my first audition was auditioning a martial arts audition for Pat Johnson at the movie studios. What happened was the people that were in charge of the extras for Ninja Turtles were in charge of hiring the Foot Clan. And their goal for the Foot Clan was to find local North Carolina martial artists who could put on these ninja outfits and then get beat up by the Ninja Turtles. So they reached out to all the local karate schools. They put words out in the newspaper and this and that. And hundreds of karate people kind of showed up to try to audition. And I was one of them. And once I got amongst that group of people, I thought I didn't have a chance. But we walked into the soundstage, and there was Pat Johnson sitting behind the table with his sleeveless shirt on and his hairy, muscular arms and his little fanny pack and a mustache that looked like he was right in the Old West or something. And he was not a very tall guy. He's, I'm 5'7". He's maybe even shorter than I was. But he could command the shit out of a room. And ultimately, I would go on to learn and observe and get to know Pat and see that he was probably one of the toughest guys you will ever meet. I've always told people, no matter how good a martial artist you are, you could not beat Pat Johnson up, because no matter how many times you knocked him down, he would refuse to believe that a pussy like you could beat him up, and he would get up and just keep coming. Jeez. So Pat didn't take any shit. Pat knew what he wanted. Pat stood there that like the first day of work, he was standing at the door of the soundstage. And as each foot soldier came in, he was like, good morning. Good morning. It's 8:59. Welcome, welcome. And then at one point, one of the guys walked in and he said, good morning. It is now 9:01. And without missing a beat, he said, call time was 9 o'clock. If you are ever late again, you will never have the opportunity to be late again, i.e. you will be fired from me. So he said, you will never be late when you work for me. And he said, I never, ever want to hear the AD or the assistant director shout out, waiting on stunts, because that's what you do when you're getting ready for the next shot. The assistant director might be like, waiting on makeup or waiting on wardrobe to do something before we could move. And that was, you never wanted to hear that because that meant your department was behind and everybody's waiting on a set where time is money. And Pat swore that if he ever heard waiting on stunts, somebody was going to pay the price. So Pat ruled with an iron hand, but he was such a caring, loving, and loyal father figure that he embraced all of us as his foot soldiers, all the stunt guys that were the turtles and everything, and we were his boys. He protected us. He looked out for us. He made sure that we were taken care of the way we needed to be, got what we needed, got the attention we needed, should we ever need medical attention or just food or whatever it was. But then if we screwed up, boy, you better be ready for the wrath of Pat Johnson. And he became a mentor to me. He became a father figure. He really helped me out during that movie. We spent a lot of time talking. And then ultimately, when the movie was over, Pat's and my relationship continued very deeply. Once I moved to California, I spent holidays at his house for Thanksgiving, and I would call him on Father's Day, and we would get together. He hired me for other jobs. So Pat Johnson, for me, is one of the many mentors and one of the fathers that I had in my life. I loved him.
So that's the real Pat in that movie, because he didn't put up with that Cobra Kai bullshit either in that movie. He was ready to disqualify Johnny when he was hitting him and botting, kicking him around. He didn't put up with any of that bullshit. So let's talk about your, for me, I call this, a quarterback stream. You never want anybody to get hurt on your team, number one, but you want to be ready. So can you talk about your Tom Brady, Tony Romo-like moment, when you're ready, like, I can do this spot. Because again, like you say in your book, your role was not as pivotal as you thought in the beginning, but then you're like, you know what? I got my opportunity. I'm taking it. So can you explain a little more about that spot?
Yeah. What some people may not know out there is, as we just talked about, I originally got hired to be one of the foot soldiers. And through crazy adventures that I'm sure we'll talk about, when I started as a foot soldier, but when the movie ended, I was Raphael. So there's all that transition in there. But just when I was the foot soldier, the things that happened was we were brought into the movie early. So I was actually brought to the movie studio a couple of weeks before the shooting started so that we could choreograph all the fights. And we had a sound stage that we worked on, all the stunt guys from Hong Kong, and then Ernie Reyes Jr. as well, who was the stunt double for Donatello. They were there, and then us foot soldiers were there. And there was about 5 of us that were supposed to be the core group of foot soldiers. And then there was about another 15 foot soldiers that were kind of more background and working and all that kind of stuff. Now, as we choreographed the fights, Pat was working very closely with the Hong Kong stuntmen and their liaison, who only spoke Cantonese, but they had an interpreter there. They actually had a couple of interpreters. Yeah. And so Pat had a storyboard of the entire movie. And what he would do is he'd say, okay, in this scene, we got to do a moment where Michelangelo's fighting this foot soldier this way, and this happens to him. So let's create that. So he would bring up the stunt double for Michelangelo, and then he would point to one of the foot soldiers, and he would say, hey, Paul, come up here. And then he would call Tom, Paul, come here. And then they would choreograph a couple of moves, figure out what it was going to be. And then Pat would turn to his assistant, Barbara, who had a yellow legal pad, and he would say, okay, Barbara, put down Tom and Paul for scene 35, where they're going to do the nunchuck scene with Michelangelo. And she would do that. And we're constantly, every day for 2 weeks, we would run through all the fight scenes, choreographing them, and Pat would turn to Barbara, okay, put down so-and-so, put down so-and-so. Well, they kept choreographing scenes, and what would happen is Pat was never really pointing to me or calling my name. Every time he pointed to us, he would call up this guy Paul, or he would call up Tom or another guy, and they kept getting the stuff. And man, that was killing me. It was breaking my heart, because here I was, poised to be an action hero, thinking to myself, Pat Johnson has no idea the incredible level of talent that I have in my body, and he's just missing it. Like I'm the next Jean-Claude Van Damme, if he would just start using me. Well, it was going on and on for a couple of days. Nothing was going on. And then we got to the skateboard scene. And in the skateboard stunt, there's just a very brief moment in the movie where Donatello's skateboarding through the sewers, chasing down some foot soldiers. And with one of them, he skates behind him. And as the foot soldier's running away, he knocks his feet out from under him. And the foot soldier's supposed to fly up in the air and splash down into the water of the sewer. So they pointed to the foot soldiers, and my heart was beating like, pick me, pick me. Hey, Tom, come up here and do this. I was like, damn it. So this guy, Tom, he tries to do the scene. And what happened was when they knocked his feet out from under him, he just didn't fall very gracefully. It didn't look quite right. It was too clunky. Okay. Yeah. And so they tried it again. It didn't work. So Pat goes, here, you sit down. He pointed to us again, and he called Larry. And it was like, okay. So Larry got up there, and I'm just watching this. Yeah. And Larry tries to do it. And they couldn't quite coordinate it where the guy looked like he was running smoothly and then would fall. It just didn't work. And so they're doing it, and I can see the frustration on the stunt guys from Hong Kong. They're just not getting it. They're shaking their heads. And so I was like, I can do this. So I went over to the interpreter, the translator, and I said, tell them I can do this. And he said, what? And so I had to talk louder, which I didn't want to do because there were people around. And I said, please tell them that I can do this. Yeah. And so he walked over there, and in Cantonese, he was like, hey, blah, 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 blah. This guy can do this. All of a sudden, they all looked at me. I was right on the spot. And one of the guys said, okay, you come over here. And Pat was like, Ken, step up here. So I got up there, and they set up the scene, and Pat was like, action. I took a couple of steps. The guy skateboarded up behind me, knocked my feet out. And man, it was right back to my wrestling days with my brother. I threw myself up in the air, slammed down on the ground. Now, mind you, I'm 21, 22 years old, totally made out of rubber and snot at this point, and willing to do anything for my dreams. And I sacrificed my body in that moment, just slammed down on the ground. As soon as I did it, the guys from China, from Hong Kong, were just like, yes, 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 yes. And Pat turned to Barbara and he goes, okay, Barbara, put Ken down for scene number, blah, 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 blah. From that moment forward, every piece of choreography they put together, the guys from Hong Kong would point at me and go, you, come on. And so from that point forward, I was like the premier foot. Now, I'm not trying to undermine any other foot soldiers' contribution to the movie. Everybody they were all great martial artists. They all had moments in the sun that weren't mine. But I just know that from that point forward, I had elevated myself to where I became the axe-wielding ninja. I became the ninja that swings on the rope and breaks through the window. I'm one of the ninjas that drops down through the skylight. I'm the ninja that does the nunchucks against Michelangelo. So it's just on and on and on. I became that ninja, and then it went on from there. And then early on in the movie, shooting a fight scene, and then life changed even more after that. But it was great.
And that's what I want to talk. So when you fell, there was no pen. You literally were just like on the concrete, right? Or in that spot. You're like, all right, I got to do this. I want that spot, right? Wow.
Yeah. Now, mind you, underneath our foot uniforms, we were wearing elbow pads, knee pads, and just like a tailbone pad. Okay, and it was almost like you would wear like football pants, and there was a little tailbone pad that you stuck in there, or hip pads if you want. Because we were doing a lot of what you call it has a new meaning now because of MMA. But in the stunt world, every time you're getting beat up and falling, it's called ground and pound. So we were doing a lot of ground and pound. And so we were all sort of had a little bit of pads. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, throughout that fight scene, and that's where I was really the foot soldier, because a lot of the other times I was Raphael. I was slamming my little 22-year-old self on the concrete and the linoleum and the wood and whatever it took, man. And you just jumped up and said, all right, let's do it again.
That's why, I did, because I didn't read that spot. And I was just trying to envision this in my head, because now I'm not too big in the movies, kind of, but that scene was like later in the movie. So is that how they filmed it? Because like that spot with Donatello, that's near the end when the Foot are invading the Turtles when they come back to New York. So I want to know, the nunchuck spot is actually, in the middle part of the movie, and that's like your main event. So again, we're not blowing smoke up your ass here, but as much as a Mikey fan I am, and even my dad was like, he goes, the foot soldier won that fight in the showdown, because all Michelangelo does, and my dad's like all he's doing is twirling his nunchuck around. So how did you? I want to know a little more in that detail. I know you say Bacentos now, but when that foot soldier does he like it's on now. I mean, he gets locked in. So I want to know a little more of like who came up with that, style of that nunchuck. Was that you from your previous martial arts, or who directed you on how you came up with that little, Wild West scene, so to speak?
Well, what happened was it all started because during the audition for Pat Johnson, he wanted every martial artist to show the wide array of skills that they had, whatever it was. And so in addition to doing some katas or forms, as they call them in martial arts, I demonstrated some weapons. One of the weapons that I did was nunchucks, because I was a young, energetic guy. I had learned how to use nunchucks, and I could use them fairly well. As demonstrated by the fact that I eventually got to be that foot soldier. So what happened was, as we were preparing to do the scenes and they needed somebody to be the chucker because it's in the script, Pat asked myself and one other martial artist who had done nunchucks at the audition to do another audition for the producers. Okay. So I had to get up and spin nunchucks in front of the producers along with my fellow foot soldier. And as soon as we were done, the producer pointed to me and go, use him. And that was it. So I got the call to be the nunchuck guy. Now, what that meant was, for me, this was exciting. And you asked earlier about, where the fight scene is in the movie. When we shoot movies, they shoot those things completely out of sequence.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For instance, like the New York scene where Raphael's in the subway and saves April O'Neil from the foot soldiers, that's in the first 10, 12 minutes of the movie, but it was the last thing we shot. So you never know where you're going to shoot, what's going to come up in the movie. The fight scene that we shot in April's apartment was very early on in the shooting of the movie, because it was the biggest action sequence in the movie, the most moving pieces, and they wanted to get a handle on it, because you can't run out of time at the end of the movie, only have 2 days left to shoot, but need 4 days to shoot the fight scene. So they wanted to shoot the fight scene early on to get it out of the way, and then they go on and shoot everything else. So we shot that apartment stuff probably one of the first few days in the movie is when it started. So I auditioned, got the part as the foot soldier, and then it was super exciting for me, because this is the first time in my life that a real life Hollywood movie director, first of all, knows my name. It was Steve Barron, the incredible visionary music video director and other things. And he's like, okay, Ken, I want you to look at the screen here, and then you're going to do your nunchucks right into the camera. And he explained the whole scene to me and everything. And so I did the nunchucks. Now, I'm going to tell you this story, and I'm not telling this story for self-aggrandizement or make myself sound better than I was, but this is what happened. I did the nunchucks, and they stopped, and the cameraman was like, okay, he's too fast. We can't see the nunchucks. So they stopped what they were doing, and they took my nunchucks, and they took them over to the prop guy, and they had the prop guy paint a silver line down the side of the length of each nunchuck, so that when I spun them around, the camera might see that silver line, and it would look like light glinting off the chucks wherever they kind of went. So I'm doing the nunchucks, and I'm doing them pretty well. The only regret I have is I didn't know what the framing was, And to this day, some of my best moves are just below the frame of the camera. You kind of know what I'm doing. I'm stirring the pot. They're rotating around my hand like crazy, but you can't really see all of it. So I wish I had known I could. But anyway, I'm flicking those things around. I'm doing a great job. And the guy who was from Hong Kong, who was Michelangelo, he did an amazing job of spinning nunchucks around while wearing a 40-pound giant rubber suit. Now, that being said, it's hard to spin nunchucks around because you're putting them under your arms, you're moving them behind your back. Well, once you put on this turtle costume, you're now handicapped as to how well you can do. Right. So Michelangelo did whatever he could do. And the producers and the director are like, stop. They're like, the ninja is much better than the Ninja Turtle.
Like my father said, exactly.
Yeah, what are we going to do? So on the spot, they just over the next little while, they created that entire moment where they made Michelangelo do the propeller nunchucks on the end of his finger. So the prop guy took a pair of nunchucks, they made them stiff, so it was one long continuous, board. Yeah. They took a clutch cable, they ran it up the actor, Michelin Sisti, they ran it up his leg, all the way down his arm and out the fingertip of his turtle glove. They mounted that nunchuck on that clutch cable, and then just out of sight, the prop guy had a power drill, and he just pushed the trigger on the power drill, and so the nunchuck spun like a propeller on Michelangelo's finger, and then Michelin blows on his fingernails and polishes them to show that he's very nonchalant about it. So what ended up happening was they couldn't pay off the scene with Michelangelo doing better action, so they paid it off with Michelangelo doing comedy. And that's how he beats me, with that comedic moment, because he's so awesome, he can do this incredibly funny thing. So it was really a crazy twist of events. And I guess because I was so freaking awesome at nunchucks, it created one of the most memorable moments in the movie. I say that to be funny, but it's one of my favorite moments in the film.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. And then I was curious, did you ever get to see on YouTube, because I know the line you have in here is Besentos now, but there's a clip on YouTube. It says, TMNT deleted scene in German audio. And it's actually a better scene of you, because it's when Michelangelo's doing the Wheel of Fortune and you're ready to call it Besentos, but it's got you as a really good actor, like feeling this rage, like, what do we need to do to this guy? And then you finally do Besentos now. Because in the American movie, I think they just clipped you yelling the phrase, but in the German release, because they couldn't use Michelangelo's nunchucks, I guess, he's like, you can see the rage inside your mask. Like, we got to do something to stop these guys.
Okay, well, one, I want you to send me that link.
Yes.
On that, because I've never seen it.
Absolutely.
And two, those are, now again, when you're a foot soldier, you are multiple foot soldiers, right? So the guy doing the nunchucks was not necessarily the guy that was calling for the Besentos, right?
Oh,
you're in different places at different times. I mean, just in the scene alone, when Raphael drops through the skylight and he's unconscious, in that moment alone, I'm the second ninja foot soldier that drops through the skylight, but then I'm also the foot soldiers that swing through the windows like Tarzan.
Yeah.
So
that's what I mean.
So we're all over the place. So it's not necessarily that nunchuck guy was the Besentos guy. But the reason, if you watch the credits of the movie, at the end, I think there's 28 actors that are credited in the film, aside from stunt performers.
Sure.
The 26th credit in line is Talkative Foot number 2, and it's me. And the reason that they call me Talkative Foot number 2 is there was a whole other thing that I did in the movie, which I think is also in a German version somewhere, but I can't find it. So if you or any of your viewers or listeners can, I would love to see it. There's a moment where I'm fighting against Donatello. I'm the foot soldier. And I say, I'm going to turn you into turtle soup. But first, I'm going to shell you like an oyster. And then we fight, and I get my ass kicked, and that's the end of it. And we shot that whole scene. We did it, the whole thing. I'm sure they were going to replace my voice, just like they did with all the foot soldiers. But it never showed up. I think it's in the German version somewhere, Somewhere there's this mysterious German version that has
Yeah.
everything we've ever wanted to see.
Yes.
But I think they replaced every other. The only other time you really hear a foot soldier talk is in the subway at the beginning, and that was an actor from New York. They dubbed his voiceover with somebody else. When I'm the nunchuck guy, and you hear me going, oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's somebody else dubbed
Oh,
over.
okay.
But when you hear Bacentos now, that's me, baby.
Okay.
So even though I didn't make my turtle soup line in,
Yeah.
I did get in with my Bacentos line.
I'm excited to send you this YouTube clip because then you can let me know also there's a spot in this like deleted scene where April actually pulls the carpet and trips up some foot soldiers. So I wonder if you'll be able to recall if that was you taking that fall too.
Oh, I remember that scene. I can't remember who took the fall.
Okay.
Perhaps if I see that scene, I might know. But
yes,
I do remember
we can't see. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, again, because I think the UK or whatever couldn't get the nunchucks because of what was going on at that time. So yeah, it's something that didn't make it to the States. Like you say, I don't know why. Again, if anyone is listening out there, hopefully we can get these scenes for an American release someday, because you also get Steve Barron's commentary on there too on that German release, which would be nice.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, if you can find them and then cut them into this interview somehow, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. All right, so now we start getting to the meat and potatoes here. So can you share how you actually got the spot for Raphael?
Yeah, early on in the film, they shot the scene where Raphael meets Casey Jones in Central Park.
Okay.
And what people may not realize is the actual interaction between Raphael and Casey Jones, played by Elias Koteas, was shot in North Carolina, where we shot the movies. The exterior stuff, when Raphael runs away to chase him and gets hit by the taxi cab and stuff like that in the street, that actually is in New York. So what plays for Central Park is in North Carolina, and as soon as they run out of the park, that's actually New York. And we shot in New York the very last week of filming. All that stuff in New York was the last week. So early in the movie, when we're in the park shooting Elias and Raphael meeting, Elias Casey pulls out a cricket bat and he hits Raphael. And Raphael, you see a shot where he sails through the air and then he lands in a trash can head first. Well, when they shot that scene, they took the guy from Hong Kong who was at that point the stunt double for Raphael at the beginning of the movie. They held him up by his ankles and they dropped him head first into the trash can. When they did, the top of his head hit the bottom, and the way the turtle mask fit on his face caused it to crunch his nose, and it broke his nose. Because it broke his nose, he could no longer wear the turtle head because he couldn't support it on his cheeks and his nose, kind of like a hockey goalie mask or something like that.
Yeah.
So it almost looks exactly like the thing that Captain America wears in the movies. There's a fiberglass piece that looks just like that sits on your head. It's form fitted to your head, goes over your nose, and then the whole turtle head is mounted on that fiberglass helmet that we wear. So that fiberglass helmet broke his nose. As soon as it broke his nose, he was done. Couldn't wear the suit anymore. Well, at that point forward, they've got a whole movie to shoot, and this guy's from Hong Kong. So they didn't know what to do. And on a movie set, time is money. They needed to replace that guy as quickly as possible to shoot all the action in the movie other than what was going on right there. So they went to Pat Johnson, the fight coordinator, and they said, look, we don't have the time or the money to bring somebody else over from Hong Kong. Have you got anybody that you think could fit in this suit and could fight like a Ninja Turtle? And so based on all the things I had done, Pat immediately came to me. I was his first choice. He pulled me aside and he said, Ken, I want you to know that if you can go to the creature shop and you can fit in the Raphael costume, you're going to be the new Raphael. And I was like, holy shit, this is all my dreams coming true again. And so I went to the creature shop, which is what we call the area on the set where the Jim Henson organization was, and all their computers and parts and paint and everything. And they brought out the various turtle parts that it would take to fit me into a turtle costume. they stuck that Raphael head on me. And at that point, they looked at me and they go, well, you're the new Raphael. And from that moment, changed my life. And now here we are 35 years later talking about it.
Unbelievable. So I know I can't keep you too much longer, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that taxi cab scene when you're going to get hit. And also, like you say, so how they film this is, again, this wasn't you when they did that double somersault. Remember that spot where Leo and Raph are kind of doing like a double somersault, like rolling. So that was before you became Raphael then? That spot?
Yeah, that's in their April's apartment.
Yeah, well, that's like on the rooftop fight right before they fight Shredder. They're doing that little spot, and then Raphael does like a triple kick. It was like a spinning kick. Yep. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the taxi cab scene, and just like again, you said it, as you're kind of handicapped in these, showing off your martial artist skills. So how the heck the taxi cab scene, and how did you pull off that spinning kick as Raphael in that suit against that foot soldier? That's world famous. It's in the trailer, and it's one of the best spots in the movie.
Well, the taxi cab scene was really exciting because you're basically putting your body in contact with a 2,500 pound moving hunk of metal. And I had never done that before. As much as I had trained to be an action hero growing up and riding motorcycles, jumping out of airplanes, scuba diving, everything I could do, I never really thought to practice getting hit by a car because I figured, all right, when's that going to happen? Well, here it was on my very first job dealing with a taxi cab. Plus, I'm inside a turtle suit where you can't see shit.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to do fight scenes and choreography because you really have to accentuate your head movements to turn and look and see what's in front of you. So Pat Johnson was very meticulous about coordinating that and setting up marks on the road and working with the driver of the cab and all that kind of stuff. And we basically just kind of set it up where the cab was going to hit a certain point. I was going to take a certain amount of steps in the suit. And if everything worked out mathematically, we'd come together at the right time and the right speed. And then I'd be able to kind of launch myself over the car to keep going. I won't lie. I was nervous as hell because I thought, just one little misstep or one little accident by the driver who I didn't know this guy very well. Right. Who knew what was going to happen? Fortunately, though, with enough practice and enough pre-rehearsal time right before we did it, which is very important. Pat was adamant about nobody getting hurt on the movie if that anything could be avoided. It's not Wild West stuff. It's all planned out. We did it. And the first time I did it, man, I'm sure my heart rate was, 120 beats a minute and just going at it and doing it. And then, we probably did it 4 or 5 times. And each time I got a little more comfortable with what was going on, but still nervous. And I think I successfully did it every time. And they picked whichever take they used. I wasn't really sure, but it was a very exciting moment. And it was one of those things where, yes, I was scared, but I think the adrenaline kind of helped me do and get there and do what I needed to do to get over it.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge.
Just to get, so that's pretty impressive too, though, Ken, is to do that only about 4 or 5 takes instead of 30 or 40 takes where they got to get the right flip. So that's pretty impressive in itself. Only doing it.
Well, A, you only have so much time to do it, and right. B, they want to limit it because each time you do it introduces a greater percentage of something going wrong.
Oh,
so
that's true.
If you can get something in a couple of takes and everybody's like, "Did it work? Did it work?" Then you stop. Also, what happens is in the stunt world, there's what's called a bump. And a bump is what is at the stunt coordinator's discretion. If I was to ask you, if I'm the stunt coordinator, Mike, and I ask you to fall off a roof and you fall, 2 stories into some cardboard boxes, well, you're already being paid as a Screen Actors Guild performer under a contract as a stuntman. You're making, a couple $1,000s a week or whatever it is to be there and do whatever I tell you to do. However, each time you do a stunt where you are doing something dangerous and could possibly hurt yourself, I, as the stunt coordinator, will give you a bump, meaning I'll give you another $500 or I'll give you another $200 or $1,000 or whatever it is that you're doing, whatever I think is the right amount of money. So if you're going to get hit by a car and you're doing this turtle stunt, I might be like, hey, Mike, I'm going to bump you $100 every time when you get hit by the car. Well, if you do 3 of them, that's $300. That's 3 bumps. If you do 5, that's 5 bumps. So sometimes, and I'm not saying that's what took place here, but just sometimes in the stunt world, you only do things so many times, A, for safety, B, did you get it right, and C, because you can only get bumped so many times before you run out of money, and then it's like, all right, you're not going to do it anymore. Because there's got to be some risk reward going on in there. To answer your other question, when it came to fight choreography, all the kicks, all the flips, everything we did, especially in the first movie, was all unaided, pure martial arts. The only time we used an assistance was, I think, Donatello does some kind of flip over somebody, and I can't tell you exactly what it was. If I saw the movie, I could point it out exactly.
Yeah.
And that was Ernie Reyes Jr. using a mini tramp to do that. But in the first movie, there's no wires, there's no other tramps, there's no anything. Everything is martial artists flying through the air, doing their stuff. And that's why what was so amazing about this was the level of martial artists that were working on this film. The stunt guys for Leonardo, Michelangelo, and originally Raphael were all guys that had been brought to America by Golden Harvest, and they were part of that Golden Harvest contingency. Now, Golden Harvest Films, for those that don't know, that's the company that made Bruce Lee's Hong Kong movies. And they also made Jackie Chan movies. So you can see right there, their level of martial arts knowledge and pedigree is very, very high. They're not going to be working with, stooges. So these guys are world-class movie martial artists. And then originally they had a guy who was stunt doubling Donatello, but he got hurt somewhere early on, even I think before rehearsal started, because I never met him. When I got to the movie, Ernie Reyes Jr., who's an American martial artist of he was the Michael Jackson of martial arts. He was a star when he was 8 years old. And now at 17, Pat Johnson had tapped into him to come be Donatello's action double. So these guys are world-class martial artists. And that's why for me, I felt so honored to be with those guys. I felt honored, and I also felt like, for lack of a better word, validated in my martial arts skills because I was able to be with these guys. I had quote unquote, I'm laughing when I say it, but I had Ninja Turtle level martial arts skills. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. So when we talk about the spinning kicks and the moves and the things like that, that was every ounce of 22-year-old hopes and dreams and energy and drive and sexual frustration and everything that I could put into that stuff to try to be an action hero under 35, 40 pounds of foam latex. And so we were all striving to try to make the best scenes we could do. Pat Johnson gave us a lot of grace and leeway to bring our own talents to what we were doing. He would say, okay, Ken, what moves do you think you can do here well? I mean, he had things he wanted to do. It's not like we were just doing, but it was a collaborative effort to create what we could and then also say, okay, what would your character do here? What would Raphael do in this scene versus like what would Michelangelo do? Like, Michelangelo did the funny thing with the nunchucks and does other funny things like the Three Stooges when he's fighting people. Raphael would never do those things, So it was all a combination of high-level martial arts, collaboration, and just great oversight and grace from Pat Johnson.
Yeah, it seems like. So what are you most proud of from this first Turtle movie as you start bringing this in for a landing? What are you most proud of from the first movie?
Man, it's a tough question. When you say most proud, I'm just my participation in the movie. I would say that. The things that really stand out to me about the film are sort of what I think about as the escalation of my career or really the accomplishment of my dreams. You read the book. For me, ever since I was 13 years old, all I wanted to do was be an action hero in the movies. That was my goal. And so when I first got my first job out of college was being hired to be a foot soldier in the Ninja Turtle movies. And that felt like, holy cow, I'm on my way. I just got hired to be a ninja in a real Hollywood movie. But then I got the job as the talkative foot and the nunchuck foot soldier. And that elevated me, as the original foot soldier, we were just being paid as extras. We were nothing more than that. We weren't Screen Actors Guild performers. We were what was called special abilities extras. And we were making $75 a day before taxes. So then when I got the fellow Chucker and the Bacentos and the talkative foot number 2, I became a Screen Actors Guild performer. Now, again, I use this expression a lot, but for those that don't know, getting your Screen Actors Guild card is a huge step for any wannabe actor. They don't just give them out. You can't just apply for it. It's this weird catch-22 where you have to get a part in a movie to get your Screen Actors Guild card, but you can't get a part in a movie unless you're a Screen Actors Guild member. So what has to happen is you've got to have a producer or director who loves you so much or needs your ability so much or wants to sleep with you so much that they're willing to give you a part in their movie and then do extra paperwork and go through all this crap with SAG to get you your SAG card. Well, because of my nunchucks and certain situations, I was the right place, right time. They needed my skill level, so they got me my SAG card so I could do all this ninja stuff. So that was the greatest day of my life. And then all of a sudden, Nam playing Raphael gets hurt, and I became Raphael. So that was another step up, and that became the greatest day of my life. And then, we're talking about the first movie, but then in the second movie, I went from being Action Turtle to being the actual animatronic actor speaking first unit turtle. And that felt like another step up. So I'm proud of all of it, but those are the moments that stand out to me of, hey, setting dreams, checking them off. Setting dreams, checking them off. And that stuff, I always tell people this. I go, if you've ever watched the show America's Got Talent, and somebody comes out and does something, and they'll hit that golden buzzer or whatever, and that person starts crying, right? I know for me, when I see that, and the people start crying, they're holding their heart, I start crying because for what happened to me was just like what happened to those people on America's Got Talent. Like all their dreams were coming true from that golden buzzer at that moment. And I had the joy of that at least 3 times on these movies over and over, where I just didn't think it could get any better.
And we're going to go full circle because as we talked about before, law of attraction, the quarter to penny. You went from just being the little guy to the foot soldier to the talkative foot to Raphael. Like you say, every little step, it comes full circle, baby. Comes full circle.
Yeah.
Kenn, I'd love to have you back on down the road to talk about Turtles 2 being in Raphael. Again, guys, this is the book right here. You can get it on Amazon, and I'm going to have you plug your website again too, guys. Like he says, Kenn always says, it's great toilet reading. 2 to 3 pages per chapter. It's not one of these, oh, I got to read 20 freaking pages. No, you're done with a chapter in 2 to 3, and they're all action-packed. They're very intense. Talks about his life, way more details than we covered in this podcast in regards to other fight scenes. Talks about Turtles 2 and a little bit more about Kenn's backstory. So, Kenn, where can fans find you on social media? I know you go to Comic-Cons and whatnot, so can you plug your socials, please? Because, guys, one more thing, too. If you're not following Kenn after this, please do, because he gives away these once in a while. He's done it. I've seen it. He's given away an Amazon Audible book on there. So please plug your socials for us, Kenn.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Mike. Yeah, that was fun. I actually went into a studio and recorded the whole book myself for the audio version. And every once in a while, the book, the hardcover or the paperback book is only $10 on Amazon. And it's only $10 because I don't really make money off the book. I didn't write it to try to make money or get rich or anything. Literally, I think I make like $1 for each book that sells or something like that. But also 10% of the sales also go to the Sea Turtle Conservancy because we want to take care of our turtle friends. But I priced the book at $9.99 because I just want turtle fans to enjoy it. there's stories in here and things about these movies and this franchise that even the most diehard Turtles fans do not know. And after years of doing comic conventions, after years of telling stories and seeing how much fans love it and how they're hungry for knowledge, just like I was hungry for knowledge growing up about movies. And when I was growing up and wanting to figure out how to be an action hero and a stuntman and all that, there was no internet. I had to wait till there was specials on TV or things like that to see behind the scenes. But now with this book, it's so easy for Turtle fans to get this thing. And it's this sounds so kind of corny, but it really is like my gift to Turtle fans. It's like, please, if you love these movies, you will love this book because it gives you insights and all that stuff. So that's why it's only $10. The Audible version, I don't get to set the price for. I think if you have certain Amazon memberships, it's free. Otherwise, it might be like $15 or something. But it's me telling all the stories. It's 6.5 hours of me reading the book and even adding a few things here and there that aren't in the book. But if people want to check it out or see me, one, you can find the book on Amazon. Just go type in Kenn Scott book, or you can go to turtleconfessions.com. Okay. If you go to turtleconfessions.com, it'll take you links to Amazon and all that. And if you want to go to social media, which I have a lot of fun on social media. I go to a lot of Comic-Cons throughout the year, and I try to be real active about putting up pictures of cosplay and me hanging out with fans. And a lot of, I do the nunchuck challenge. People come up to my table, and if they tell me, oh, I do nunchucks, I have a set of nunchucks I bring with me, and they do the nunchucks and we post those up there. It's a lot of fun. So I'm on Instagram as Kenjitsu, and that's Ken with 2 N's, Kenjitsu. I'm on Facebook as Kenn Scott Raphael. Super easy to find. Just type in Kenn Scott, Ken with 2 N's. Sure. And that's pretty much about it. I'm not on TikTok. I'm too old for that shit. But yeah, and I'll be doing a lot more Instagram over the next year with me and my friends. We all travel the country as what we call the Turtle Shellebration, and it's the cast from the first movies all traveling together. We have a whole lot of fun, and I'm going to be all over the country this year. I'm going to be in Sacramento, Grand Rapids, Canada, Georgia, Florida, Texas, just you name it. So if you want to hang out with me, meet the other Turtle friends, hear some Turtle tales, check it out, come visit, and you can see what's going on.
Oh my God, Ken, really appreciate your time. One final question. Now, I know you're not the diehard Turtle fan. Usually I am with asking people their favorite Master Splinter quote. So instead, what is your most favorite inspirational quote, whether it's from Bruce Lee or whoever? Like what hits home to you the most for a quote?
Man, there's a few, but the one that just pops right off into my head is be the change you wish to see in the world. And Mahatma Gandhi said that. And it's basically, it is what it is. It's like we can bitch all day about things that we think are wrong. We can bitch about the litter in the street or whatever, but it starts with us. There's nothing I can do to change the whole world overnight. But if I can start with me and be the change that I want to see, then that's the most I can say is plant that seed. Be the change you wish to see in the world.
Oh, man, Ken, I love it. Turtle power, my dude. Thanks so much for your time today.
Turtle power, Mike. Cool kids rock.
Damn straight.